All right, let's dive into a really big topic today, safeguarding. We're going to explore how we can shift it from being just a reactive, box-ticking thing into something much, much more powerful. A proactive, preventative culture that's just part of how we do things every day. Let's get into it.
And this quote right here, this is the core idea of everything we're talking about. It's all about a change in mindset. See, real safeguarding isn't some panic button you hit when there's a crisis. It's the atmosphere you create, the tone you set every single day, the whole rhythm of your interactions that actually keeps people safe from the very beginning.
So what does this shift actually look like in practice? Well, on one hand, you've got the compliance mindset. That's all about one-off training sessions, ticking a box, and basically just reacting when a problem pops up. But the culture mindset, that's completely different. It's an ongoing process, one that's focused on building trust and, this is the crucial part, preventing harm before it can even start. Look, a single slide in an induction presentation, that's not going to build a culture. It's the small, consistent signals you send out every single day that truly make the message stick. It's all about repetition, not one-time announcements. That's what convinces an apprentice that support is always there for them and that their safety genuinely matters.
Okay, so how do we actually build this culture? Well, it all starts with one absolutely essential ingredient. In this first part, we're going to look at how to lay a really solid foundation of trust.
Think about it. Your relationship with an apprentice begins the very moment they walk through that door. The induction isn't just about paperwork, it's your absolute best chance to set the tone. Even a simple statement like, "Hey, here's how you can reach me if anything at all doesn't feel right," establishes this lifeline of trust from day one.
And this just nails the human side of safeguarding, doesn't it? An apprentice might forget the exact wording of a policy, sure, but they will never forget feeling welcomed, feeling valued, and feeling believed. Making someone feel safe enough to speak up without any fear of being judged, that is probably the most effective safeguarding tool you have.
You know, culture is also built by what you model every day. Apprentices are always observing. They see how you react when someone's late, how you deal with a mistake, or even how you talk about an employer when they're not in the room. When you consistently show fairness and respect, you're teaching them what the standard is, without ever having to say a single word about it.
So, once that foundation of trust is in place, what's next? The next step is to build on it by making open and honest conversation a totally normal, expected part of the relationship.
And normalizing these conversations can be as simple as asking some really low-stakes questions during a regular check-in. These aren't supposed to be dramatic interventions. They're just gentle questions that open the door for an apprentice to share something that might be on their mind, long before it becomes a serious problem.
Now here's the key. You have to ask everyone. When you make this a routine part of every single review, it just completely removes the stigma. Speaking up suddenly doesn't feel like you're causing a big scene. It just becomes a normal part of the process, and that is so powerful for catching things early. You know, the best safeguarding cultures don't wait for a crisis to start talking about safety. They weave these themes into everyday life. A little conflict at work? That becomes a chance to talk about respect and boundaries. A success story? That's an opportunity to celebrate resilience. It's all about grabbing those teachable moments as they happen. Okay, so we've built trust and we've normalized conversation. The next big piece of this puzzle is to actively empower apprentices with the tools and the clarity they need to protect themselves. We need to build something called self-efficacy. So what's that? It's basically an apprentice's inner belief that they have the skill and, just as importantly, the right to handle tough situations. An apprentice who feels confident is so much less vulnerable to be manipulated or exploited. So building this belief, well, that is an act of safeguarding. And we can build it in really practical ways. When they handle a situation well, tell them, reinforce their skills. If they've got a tough conversation coming up, help them practice what they're going to say. And please, make sure they clearly understand their rights. These actions give them tangible tools, not just fuzzy ideas. A huge part of empowering someone is just removing that fear of the unknown. Being totally transparent about the safeguarding process, who the designated safeguarding lead is, what confidentiality really means, what happens next, that's reassuring. It shows there's a reliable system in place ready to support them. Of course, for apprentices, this culture can't just exist in a vacuum. It has to extend beyond the classroom and right into their place of work. So let's take a look at how that partnership works. An apprentice is basically living in two different worlds, with their training provider and with their employer.
For a safeguarding culture to actually work, it has to be seamless across both. If the messages and the expectations are consistent, the apprentice feels secure. But if they clash, that's when the apprentice is left feeling vulnerable.
And you can get a feel for an employer's culture just by observing the little details. How do people talk to each other? Is the humor inclusive, or does it have a bit of an edge? How closely do they support new staff? These subtle cues can tell you a whole lot about what the environment is really like. So, what do you do if an employer isn't quite there yet? Well, your role isn't to be confrontational, it's to be a guide. You can plant seeds with these gentle, constructive questions that sort of nudge them toward thinking a bit more deeply about their own practices and their support systems. So let's bring all of these pieces together. Trust, open conversations, empowerment, strong partnerships, they all combine to create one thing: the overall atmosphere within your organization.
And this right here is the ultimate goal. When all is said and done, the real measure of your safeguarding culture is simply whether an apprentice feels safe enough to be honest. Honest enough to admit they're struggling, to report a concern, or just to ask for help without that fear of being judged.
And, it's so important to remember that this kind of culture protects you, the educator, as well. A good culture means you have clear systems to follow. It means you aren't expected to carry the weight of a concern all by yourself. It becomes a shared, supportive effort, not a personal burden.
So, the most powerful safeguarding work you do, it isn't some dramatic intervention. It's the steady, quiet, consistent prevention. It's the culture that an apprentice might never be able to name or even point to, but it's one they will absolutely feel every single day.
And we'll just end with this to think about. Because if your daily actions leave an apprentice feeling truly seen, heard, and safe, you've already succeeded. You have built a culture that protects, and you have done more good than you will ever know.